As new people come into our industry and older ones leave, it's important for young professionals to gain insights from those who have gone before them. Welcome to Legacy Voices. Legacy Voices is a podcast series that gives listeners the opportunity to learn from experienced HVAC and smart building controls veterans who are sharing their hard-won wisdom and invaluable knowledge with the next generation. Now here is your host, Eric Stromquist.
Today I'm talking with John Sublett, the CTO of Tridium. Man, if you've been around the industry for a while, you know what an impact John has had on our industry, building automation, smart building controls. John's one of the guys whose fingerprints are all over the way technology is done today. So John, man, thanks for taking some time to speak with us today.
Absolutely. Really happy to be here.
John, let's start at the very beginning. Where were you born?
I was actually born in Washington, D.C. Barely remember that, though. So I really grew up in Lynchburg, Virginia, not too far. We're in Richmond, Virginia here today, and just about 2 hours west of here in the Appalachian Mountains.
That's pretty country, huh?
Spent my entire childhood there. Yeah, it's beautiful. Still go there all the time. My parents are still there.
Sort of small town, Lynchburg?
Yeah, it's an interesting place because it is small, but it feels a little bigger because there's nothing else of any size close to it.
Yeah.
So the economy feeds a lot of the surrounding counties there too. Get that small town feel, but some decent jobs there too.
So how many brothers and sisters? Or
I have an older brother, 2 younger sisters. And it's funny when my dad talks about his kids, he says he's got a lawyer, another lawyer, and a doctor, and then there's John.
So obviously, John took the most challenging job. John's the entrepreneur of the family, right?
That's right.
So tell me about growing up. Grammar school, what was that like for you? Were you like...
It's funny. I remember a little bit of that stuff. We moved to Lynchburg when I was in kindergarten. Went up through public schools and I remember what I ended up is being a computer science guy. So my first experience with a computer was back in like 4th grade.
Really?
So we had this teacher who just decided he was going to bring that to the class. And so we were writing programs. It's really stupid little things like trying to have a text conversation with a computer and just a lot of if then else. If you say this, then say something silly back.
So 4th grade. Now, what kind of computer was it back then?
Oh, man, I think it was a TRS-80.
Oh, yeah.
So, and it was basic programming and it wouldn't save anything. So you had the program printed up or written up on a piece of paper, and you got an hour with the computer, and you could go type it all in and run it and see if it worked. And if it didn't work, you were going to try again the next day or something. But
so was it love at first sight for you? The first time you get your hand on a computer?
It actually was. I remember we had a Coleco Atom, which was, I don't know if you remember ColecoVision as a video game system back then, but the Atom was like this hybrid between a video game system and a computer. I think that was in the 5th or 6th grade time frame, and some programs at home, and tried to write games and that kind of stuff.
So were you a big gamer back then?
And still now, actually. Still now. My wife says she's got 4 kids. It's our 3 and me.
Yeah.
And we do. It's funny, one of the games we used to play to blow off some steam at Tridium was one called StarCraft. And I just introduced my kids to StarCraft at home, and it's like Battle Royale, man.
Kind of like a rite of passage.
It is really fun.
Play StarCraft with Dad.
But yeah, that was back in those days at Tridium too. This was back before Honeywell. Everybody's working hard, so you got to work hard, play hard. And so we would take a break during lunch, extended for big battle of StarCraft, and we had to shut that down when people started yelling into their screens and stuff like that. It was disturbing the non-gamers in the office after a while, but it was good stuff. And we played all kinds of stuff like that, actually. We had people, some of the cast of characters you would know for sure. It wasn't just engineering stuff.
Yeah,
so we had Gil Rockwell playing with us, and Mark McCoy. I don't know if you guys remember Mark.
Jerry Frank, was he a gamer?
He was not.
Brian probably was.
He was a different kind of gamer, but not a computer gamer. Yeah, Brian was in with us. He was definitely in. Jerry would just come in with the next crazy idea all the time, which is what was great about him.
We're going to get to that. I can't wait to hear about that. But I want to stick back to early childhood. So you're getting into computers, 4th grade, and then that just morphed through like high school and everything?
It did. By the time I went to college, I took classes all the way through high school. By the time I went to college, I was pretty sure I wanted to make computer science a career. I ended up going to William & Mary, of all places. You wouldn't think you would choose William & Mary if you were going computer science, but they got a great department there, actually, and ended up in majored in economics and computer science there.
So that's a really good major. Did you have any sort of teachers along the way that really inspired you, that really encouraged you in that direction, or?
I did. It was more in college. I had a lot of friends back in high school that were kind of geeking out on the computer side that really kept me going there. But in terms of real educational influence, a couple of professors at William & Mary were just awesome. Yeah. There's a guy, his name's Phil Kearns, looked like a mad scientist, actually. Rarely wore shoes, walked around in the department, long hair, but he had the hardest classes, and yet everybody took all of them. He was that kind of guy where he was giving you the inspiration, the education, and making it fun and challenging at the same time. He was awesome.
Tell you what, it's funny when looking back on my career and my life, and I think if you're lucky, you have one or two guys like that. They're just awesome teachers that inspire you and open worlds to you. It's not like he was your guy. Huh?
Yeah, I've got a lot of inspiration from my family as well. My dad was first person from his family to go to college.
Really? So is your dad from Virginia as well? Or?
He is. He's from Lynchburg. Actually, the high school I went to, E.C. Glass in Lynchburg, Virginia, my father and my grandfather went there. So it goes way back.
So your dad broke that chain, and then the rest of you siblings just took it to the whole new level.
That's right. Yeah, he was a huge head start.
So was your dad like one of your mentors growing up? It sounds like you have a lot of respect for him.
I do, and he was. It's been interesting because he's a doctor, and he's into a lot of things, but I wouldn't call him a technology expert by any stretch. So when I call him now talking about career stuff, industry stuff, he can usually draw a parallel to something he's encountered himself, but it's rarely the exact situation that I'm finding myself in, which helps, actually. It's a different perspective from somebody who's outside of what I'm dealing with on a daily basis.
I think we're so blessed when you have a dad that you can really look up to and admire, which I did, and obviously you did too, and how much they shape how you roll. My dad's big deal was, hey, don't do anything you can't look at yourself in the mirror and be proud of. Yeah. Stuff like that. Yeah,
one of my dad's pieces of advice is that I try to live by too is whatever decision you make, that the right decision.
Nice.
So you can obsess over which way to go, but whichever way you choose, that's the right way, and make it the right way.
Yeah. Second guessing never accomplishes anything, I don't think.
Yeah.
Awesome. So William & Mary, so the college experience, obviously you got computer lab galore, you got a great teacher. So what sort of trouble did you get in college?
I don't know. I was not a troublemaker in college. I was really more of a geek. I probably had the run-of-the-mill trouble, but I never got arrested, anything like that. So I'm a little boring when it comes to that kind of thing.
Dude, because really good-looking girls now are really into geeks. We just... You probably missed that window, although I'm sure your wife is absolutely.
So actually, that's part of what probably kept me out of trouble too. Is my wife, we met in high school, and we did not go to the same school.
Okay.
She went to Virginia Tech, actually. So that's about 4 hours away from William & Mary. So we did a little bit of long distance thing and traveling back and forth. So that kept me out of trouble a little bit.
So you guys met in high school. Ed Merwin married his high school sweetheart.
Yeah, that seems to be fairly common across Tridium, actually.
You guys met in high school, so was it love at first sight, or?
Wow, this is deep personal, but I would say probably,
wants to know, man.
I would say probably so. It's funny, I was on the swim team, and I was taking one of her friends home on a regular basis just to give her a ride because she couldn't drive yet. Right. And then my now wife ended up moving in and lived on her street and was on the swim team too. And she said, hey, can you give my friend a ride home too? And so I'm a guy giving two girls a ride home from school. Like, I could probably make that work.
And everybody else is going, where do I go to the computer club, right?
I could probably make that work. And so it was a cool way to start because we became friends first. So
the friendship piece is absolutely a key piece. So you guys date in high school, go off to college, and then so you're dating through college, and then so when did you pop the question?
It's funny. After William & Mary, I went to UVA. So I got a master's in computer science from University of Virginia, which I don't know if you have any grad school experience. For me, it was great because being a liberal arts school for undergrad, you got to take everything, and it's everything, including things you didn't want to take anyway. Right. And so by the time I got to grad school, you're only taking the things that you're most interested in, and you're doing it for a couple of years, and you're doing projects. I had a great advisor there, Alf Weaver, who got me into computer networks and communication, a lot more of the technology that I use today. That foundation started in grad school. But my wife was a year behind me, so she was still at Tech when I was at UVA. That was a little rocky. That's a big rivalry, Tech and UVA. But then when she graduated, then I proposed to her one night in Charlottesville. And then the best thing ever, and if you can ever pull this off, I highly recommend it. But our start of our married life, I was finished with all my classwork at UVA. I still had to give my thesis. I already had a job. And so we got married, went on our honeymoon, and came back to Charlottesville, where I had no classwork and was just finishing up my thesis. So we spent the first month of being married in a college town with very little responsibility, actually. It was getting paid to go there. It was not real money, but it was enough to pay rent on the apartment and eat some ramen noodles. And so it was a great start.
So you're going to have an extended honeymoon.
And then we went straight from there to I started out at Hughes Network Systems. That's up in Gaithersburg, Germantown, Maryland. And so we moved from Charlottesville up to the metropolis, the sprawling metropolis of the greater D.C. area. It was culture shock. Try to go out to eat, and if you show up anywhere at 7 o'clock, there's still an hour wait around there. But that was fun. That's actually where I met Brian Frank up at Hughes Network Systems.
So you met him and how that happened, because you were so instrumental in the whole founding of Tridium. And tell us about that meeting.
Really instrumental in the founding of Tridium was Jerry Frank. Right? It's his idea. He's the one who had the frustration with the state of the world for building automation and the idea of something different. And so I had the good fortune. And I think back on the types of really lucky occurrences that happened to me. But going up there, I mean, I had 4 or 5 different jobs offered coming out of school, and I picked that one just because it seemed nice. It seemed like a great job, seemed like a great company, and I liked what they were doing. It was a satellite telephony system, and I was in communications and networking from my grad school. So I happened to pick that place, and I walk in, and the team I happened to get assigned to, it's a pretty large company, even it's part of GM, but it was still a pretty large division, and I happened to be put on the same development team as Brian Frank. And so
he was there working there as well.
He was there already. He'd been there about a year. Yeah. And Brian skipped the grad school thing. It was completely unnecessary for his brain. And so he was already there, and no knock on Hughes, but it wasn't the most challenging work, it turned out. So we had a lot of extra time on our hands while still doing all of the work to keep up with the day-to-day stuff. We weren't idle. We actually started to look at other technologies and build things for Hughes that weren't necessarily assigned. And at that point, that's when we started playing. Right then was when Java came out. So all of Niagara is built on Java technology. And so we started playing with that up there. And
he had a background in building. He was with Robert Shaw, wasn't he, before he was...
No, his first job out of school was Hughes also.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're about the same age. He came out of Virginia Tech, but the reason he was there before me is he jumped straight out of school and was up there.
Okay, so walk me through this. So you guys are doing stuff for Hughes, and all of a sudden one night you're having a beer, and Jerry Frank goes, I'll tell you what, this building automation controls industry, they're doing it all wrong.
Yeah. What happened was...
You work with Brian.
Yeah. In hindsight, what actually I think was happening, and I'll have to ask Brian this, I never have asked him this before, was I interviewing for that job while I was up there? Because he started coming up with, hey, I want to work on some of this stuff. You want to work on it with me? There. And so we were doing these little side projects and stuff. And then sure enough, at one point we got to lunch. He's like, hey, here's the deal. My father down in Richmond, Virginia, has been working to start this company. You know, he's been working on it for a couple of years, but it's a go. We're going to do it. And so he said, do you want to come? And at the time, I loved working with him. Yeah. Richmond, D.C. was a little bit of a big feeling city to me coming from Lynchburg. I had tons of friends from Lynchburg, actually, that already moved to Richmond. And so he's offering me the best thing I've ever heard. Yeah. So come to work on something really cool. And I don't know, you guys have met Jerry. Yes. He can be a quiet guy sometimes, but not when he's got a good idea. So I met with him, and it's like, this is a no-brainer. I mean, the guy, he's so passionate about it and lays out what he thinks the challenges are and what we'll be able to go do. And
because Jerry had actually been with Robert Shaw, right? Jerry had.
He came from Robert Shaw. He was
so he had the building automation. That was where the linkage came in.
That's one of the things I tell people about Tridium. Of the first, I'd say 30 employees at Tridium, Brian and I were the only ones that didn't come from building automation. And so I do think that just by the nature of the beast, it led us down a non-traditional path. because we didn't have any preconceived notions on how it should work. We worked with Danny Walquist, who was Jerry had brought him over. He was the engineering leader, so he was the Dan Georges at the time too. Both of them had come from, I guess at that point it was CB.
Yep.
Robert Shaw, then CB. So they brought the experience so they could, and Gil Rockwell was pretty soon in there too, tell us whether it was insane or not, but at least the approach was a greenfield experience.
So Jerry's vision, though, was it really based on an open platform? Was he targeting the whole, this proprietary stuff didn't make sense? What was the original
it's funny.
vision?
You know what, man? I was going back, this is not that long ago, less than 2 years ago. I was cleaning out crap in my office at home, and I found some of the old papers from Tridium. And actually, the original company was called Metalogic. And then when we knew we wanted it to be a web-focused, internet-focused company, and we went out to get the domain name and couldn't get that one. And so we brainstormed up. I think it was Brian, actually, that came up with Tridium as the new name. But I found these papers, and you start reading the business plan, and you know what? Yeah. We went about it a lot of different ways, but the core vision for what started Tridium was exactly that. It was open systems and giving customers choice and bringing the value to the software and the system beyond just the devices that were part of it. And that was in writing from day one from Jerry Frank. So it's pretty.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
That's pretty amazing to go back and read that, because when you're on the journey, you feel like you're just going all over the place. You feel like you're just walking through the jungle, and then to go back and see that from that long ago and go, you know what, that whole walk was on this path that he set back then.
You know what, you've got to say, because Ken and I are talking about, Ken Smyers and I are talking about eventually having a control trends museum. That document, if we ever get to the museum, should be in the museum. That's brilliant. So, wow. So you're very familiar with disruptive technology, because I can remember when that came out. I think one of the first things is, for disruptive technology, if too many people understand what it is and it's not disruptive, at least at the beginning.
Yeah.
And wow, but to think about that.
I tell people that too. They'll ask me, where did this technology come from? I told you guys a little while ago that if you look at what lined up for us when we were starting Tridium and the choices that we ended up making, it's not that unlike what we're seeing today, where there are a bunch of technologies that had just either been approved as standards or released as commercially available things. So Java was right then. So we were 96 when we started. Java was late 95, early 96. BACnet as an official standard was right then. Monworks was already there. The web and the internet both became commercially available right then. They were academic before then, but for commercial use, they were like 95, late 95. So, hey, this is the perfect storm. But the technology is one thing, but the real big challenge, I think, was the channel to market, right? And so Tridium doesn't exist without those early adopters. And they're early adopters in the face of, particularly in the U.S., just dominating big companies with proprietary technology. And so you look at who we had at Tridium. We had Paul Oswald, Ed Merwin, John Petsy, Greg Barnes, all these people that have moved on to create great businesses in this industry. A lot of them started at Tridium. That was our cast of people that were building the business. So me and Brian and Dan Georges and Gene Allgood and all these guys were doing the technology, but it doesn't go anywhere without all that. And that, to me, you look at particularly the Vicon guys, that was the original Tridium channel and adopters. Those businesses are also the who's who of building automation.
Yeah, now. So you guys must have had what did you guys look for someone when you hired them? Because obviously the people you mentioned have gone on to achieve great things. Was there a common denominator that was there something you were looking for to be on your team?
Yeah, so that side of the business, that hiring was really driven by Jerry. And so he was looking for some fearless people that really got what the opportunities were and understood where the bottlenecks were in the industry. So I did me and Brian and others did a lot of the hiring of the engineering.
Yeah.
And so our mantra was hire smart people.
Yeah.
It didn't matter that they had specific experience with a specific technology. You're just trying to hire smart, motivated people who are looking to crank on something awesome.
It truly is a great story. And for our podcast listeners, we're sitting at a big, beautiful table here in Richmond, Virginia. And John, you said this was one of the first pieces of furniture you guys had, and you guys were looking at it going, this is 96, 97. You're going, we're just getting started. Maybe the adoption rate hadn't taken off yet. But tell us that story about the table and what you guys were thinking.
I would say this table we're sitting at is the ultimate symbol of Jerry Frank's optimism.
Yeah.
Because,
big ass.
I can be pretty adventurous when it comes to technology, but I will admit that I am fiscally very conservative. And there's a lot of people that probably listen to this that know me well enough to know that I shop too long for everything that I shop for. So to see this thing show up, and we're sitting in what we call the Customer Solutions Center here, which is where all of our partner and customer meetings happen. And the other side of this office, at the time, we had taken over from space from Toyota Motor Credit Corp. And so we didn't change a thing in that space. We didn't have the money to do it. And so you walk into that space and you could see where their cubes used to be. So you could see the wear patterns in the carpet from where they used to have the layout. Not only that, we had the payment window in the front office. So up here where the reception area is, that was actually a payment window with the little slot to slide your check. Funniest thing about that, too, is we had been in the space for over a year, and somebody came in to make their car payment. like, I got bad news for you, buddy. If you're just now making this payment, you better go back out to your car because somebody's going to come and repo it. But anyway, so that was the office that we were working in, and we're like, you know what? This is serious business, and we need a place to have serious conversations. And so we put this in at a time when we were not, we could ill afford it, and like I said, it was a sign of optimism, and it was obviously a.
Well, by that, and for our listeners out there, watching the Redskins come in here with tryouts, and they can run a 40-yard dash on top of this table. It's just a beautiful piece.
And you can hear them with the microphones.
So the early days, you got the great idea. You're getting the team together. I imagine it was just a lot of fantastic energy, a lot of excitement. What were some of the pivotal points that sort of got you guys over that hurdle to get the adoption? Because you really were running up against a lot of giants who did not want to see this thing open up, I'm sure.
I talked about the channel. So we had, I say channel, but these are people, right? They're people they get it, they know how to sell the vision. And so it was really their vision too. We just provided them the technology to help them execute their vision. Guys like Scott Cock. And I'd say the pivotal point, though, I don't know if you're familiar with I'm sure you're familiar with R2, right? The R1 was there was such thing as an R1. So we did an R1 that was really just to raise money for the company. So this is the concept we're trying to execute on. We did do a couple of projects with the R1 technology, and that got us the funding to do R2. But R2 was open in the sense that you could get it through open channels. You didn't have to get it from one of the big players. And then it was open from a communication perspective, so you could talk to anything with it. But what made that happen was we had a team here in Richmond that developed the software to do all those integrations. Systems integrators were using the tools, but we had a team that was writing the code to talk to BACnet and Modbus and legacy systems and all that stuff. And so the pivotal point for us was when we realized that was not sustainable. So the concept took off so well that we were in the way. We could not work fast enough to meet the needs of what people wanted on top of this technology. And so we were sitting around and, you know what, we got to do something different. And I go back and credit Jerry Frank, John Petsy, and the business leaders at the time, and the investors to have the patience with us to do it again. So AX, which is the version that's out there and ubiquitous really, was a complete rewrite from R2. We brought almost no code forward. And think about that. You've got a business that's starting to do okay, but we're hit at this inflection point and we go say we want to do it over. But we did, and that decision point and the commitment by the business to let the technology guys go do that, with the idea that we were going to unleash the hounds, right? We were going to say, this is the core technology, but anybody can build on it.
I tell you what, that is, wow. That's the kind of stuff legacies are made of. You think about it, because so non-conventional wisdom. We're doing great. We're doing so good, by the way, that we're just going to tank this and rewrite it, have it be sustainable.
Yeah, and we could
It took a lot of guts and a lot of courage and a lot of salesmanship, obviously, to get your investors.
And you go back to those early adopters again. It took their belief in that concept too.
Yeah.
So that allowed them to invest in their own development. So that's when you started seeing systems integrators hire software engineers, and some of the big distributors hiring software engineers. And then in Europe in particular, you saw whole companies start up that were just developing extensions for Niagara. It's awesome. Awesome.
No, it really is. And I love to hear the passion in your voice about this. I can tell, man. And one of the common things when you talk to people that have been involved in Tridium is their sort of love. Whether we're Tridium now or not, there's almost a reverence and a love, and everybody's passionate about their days at Tridium. So
it's fun. You get to see. I still don't know anything about building automation compared to the people that work in this industry. You have to learn a certain amount, but being able to provide a technology that you put in the hands of those folks and see where it goes. That's you guys come to the summit. We do another event like that in Europe, and it's a trade show also. It's not just Tridium and other people preaching from a podium. You get to go see what people built. It's awesome.
You, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. It's a partnership with people that you didn't even know you're partnering with.
So what makes a good, maybe coder's not even the right word for it, but obviously the engineers you sell for software and the people you look for, what makes a good software engineer? Maybe that's the right term for it, or programmer, or people that work in your department.
I think that's a tough question. I think I would start with pride in your work and a desire to see your work hit the market, see the light of day, make an impact. Everything else, if you got those things, it kind of takes care of itself. But if you talk to a software engineer, anything you do as a software engineer, if you look at it a year later or 2 years later, it looks worse and worse. And so having it be something that you really liked, at least when you did it, gives it a little bit more longevity. There's a discipline that comes with it that says, this software needs to last, it needs to meet this need, and by the way, I need to be able to pull pieces of it out, put new pieces of it in without breaking the whole. It's a discipline and a pride in your work. And
it's a mindset. It's cool because, I obviously come from the other side, and I'll ask you the question, Jobs or Wozniak? You're probably going to choose Wozniak, right? Yeah. And you talk to guys from the sales side, Steve Jobs, but you got to give them both. You have to have both.
Yeah, absolutely.
But okay, so was he one of the greatest? So educator or community, Hall of Fame of programmers, is Wozniak at the top, or who are some of the greats that if you weren't a programmer, you wouldn't know it. If you were a programmer, you go, yeah, he's right or he's wrong.
Yeah, I don't want to answer. I don't. That's one I can't really. I can't recite a bunch of names like that. There's a few, but most of them are writing books and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no.
But
And now we obviously got N4 out now. It's a whole new thing. Just to hear this history for me about how you guys roll, it really inspires me. I was inspired by N4 anyway, but now hearing how your thought process is for we're going to make it better, more sustainable. And I think you summed up the programmer's dilemma right now. Whatever you write is going to be obsolete. So at least have it right at the beginning and have it be sustainable as long as possible. Yeah. So exciting stuff with N4.
Yeah, N4 was a big one. And that was, when you look across, Niagara is a hard thing to put your finger on. I feel bad sometimes for people trying to sell it to somebody that's never heard of it before, because try to describe what it is. Yeah. And so you look at the breadth of it, and this is still a pretty small team here, relatively speaking. And so you focus on areas that need focus at the time, and you try to bring everything else forward. But we had some areas of Niagara AX that had not gotten that focus in a while. And some of N4 was that, bringing focus to the user interface and the user experience, refreshing that. It's one of those things the industry had moved on from us, right? So we had a lot of Java in the UI, and the technology has moved past that. And so we had to do something about that for ourselves and the rest of the people building on top of Niagara. And then there's the cool new stuff too, right? So like that next generation of functionality, you said it earlier when we were talking, the data acquisition is a solved problem, right? So now that I've got that, what am I going to do with it? And so now you got to bring some kind of common nomenclature, taxonomy to it so that you can have this dream of applications sitting on top that can make sense of all that data that you are collecting and to create value from it. And that's where we added all the tagging and templating, that kind of stuff, and plays well with all the HVAC community, and what a great initiative that is.
Oh, yeah. No, it's cool stuff. So, John, wow, this is fascinating. So we sort of wind down a little bit. Best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
Wow, I got to think of that one for a minute. I already mentioned the one piece from my father that just said, hey, whatever decision you make it the right one. Yeah. I think it's a tough one, man. That's a really tough one.
Because we all get it. We don't think about it, but it's ingrained.
Yeah. One of the things I think is based on career choices that I've made. I've got a lot of friends who are in software in one form or another. Being so close to D.C., a lot of the schools that I've attended fed a lot of people up to that area. And so D.C. is really dominated by contract work. So what you're doing as a software engineer there is going from project to project and never getting too deep in any one thing. So what I've really liked, and you can hear when I'm talking about the people I've worked with, and both inside and outside of the companies I've worked with, being able to get deep in an area. So I do consider myself a computer scientist, but that's just a tool, right? What I really like is getting really engaged with customers, their problems, partners and their problems, and trying to take those tools and apply them to something really special. So instead of answering the question of what the best advice I've gotten, the advice I've given to myself and others is don't be a generalist.
Interesting.
Don't be a jack of all trades and a master of none. Take your favorite tools to use and apply them to something really great.
Very cool. Very cool. I like that a lot. Listen, I know you work a lot, but what do you do for fun?
That's changed over the years for me. Back, I tell you, I was on the swim team. That was a sadistic version of fun, I'd say.
What was your event? What did you do?
I was a sprint freestyler.
So you were the one who taught Michael Phelps how to...
Yeah, he calls me now and then. Says, how do I carry all these gold medals around? And my back's hurting. And I just try to tell him, hey, that only gets worse with age. But my more team fun sport that I spent a ton of time playing in high school and then intramurally in college was basketball. And
I can see that. Yeah.
I played that well into adulthood, adult leagues and stuff. And then one day it caught up to me and I tore my ACL. So I had to back down from that a bit. And
what's your position of choice when you're playing basketball? What do you typically
I'm a small forward, 2 guard.
So what's your best shot?
I'm a more long-range, mid-range shooter.
Steph Curry type?
Yeah, in that zip code. Yeah. But now I've really picked up on golf. So that's I'm terrible at it, but it's a lot of fun.
There's a lot of
and it's, guys, I'm sure you've been out there. It's one of those things. Where else can you spend that much time with people that you're choosing in a beautiful setting, drinking a few beers and having a great time? So it's a great sport. Really frustrating sport, but fun at the same time.
So you follow hoops at all? Do you have a team you play for?
I do. So UVA is my team for college, and we got Tony Bennett up there in the last few years, and they've been deep in the tournament and great success in the ACC. Everybody says it's a boring style. I'm like, hey, how boring can winning really be? Nice. So I'd like to never see Michigan State again, since they've been a little bit of trouble for UVA. But that's really where my sports allegiances lie. Football, I actually, believe it or not, I really follow William and Mary. They're an FCS team. My daughter has gone 2 seasons without missing a single game, and I've missed 1 game myself. Williamsburg's just an hour down the road from here, and it's a great experience. It's not like going to Nina's a Michigan guy. It's not like going to the big house. It's the opposite. You can go down there. Yeah, you go down there, and the kids can run down whenever they score and catch the extra point. You're not going to do that at those big stadiums. This is a great family experience. Really enjoy it. And then Williamsburg's a great place too. So those are my 2. This time of year, football's ramping up, and people laugh at me. But I'll be down in Williamsburg watching football games every time I get a chance.
You mentioned 3 kids. How old are they?
Got a 13-year-old girl, Abby, and then I've got 11-year-old boy, Ryan, and a almost 9-year-old boy, Jason.
I can tell you enjoy being a dad.
I do. It's funny, you asked me other things I do. Music is a big thing in our house, and I grew up playing piano, play some guitar now, and I knew enough guitar to get Abby into it. Yeah. So now I gave her the best lessons I could give her, But now she's taken real lessons and she likes to sing. So she's got, her instructor has said he's not going to assign a song unless she's going to play it and sing it. And so we're getting entertained on a daily basis at home with that. She's great.
Oh, that's good stuff. So now, what kind of music do you? So you still play, obviously? Or?
I do. I'm all over the map. I write some stuff myself, which is real low key. And then my favorite band, and people laugh at me for this, but my favorite band is Green Day.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And it's super easy stuff to play. So
would you like
it's all about, no, I just like the songs. I like the lyrics, and they're a fun band. But yeah, as somebody who likes to play guitar, it's super easy to play because it's all power chords. And, and I like all styles of music. Anything live is good with me too. There's nothing like live music.
It's funny, most people that I talk to that are really into computer programming are also into music.
I found that too. In fact, at one point we talked about for one of the summits getting a band together to try to play. It didn't end up happening. I don't know if you remember that we did have Gareth Johnson one year open for the entertainment, and he played a couple songs, guitar behind the neck. Yeah. He's incredible. So
we keep talking about maybe having a live band at the Control Trends Awards, because you got Roger Ebert out from Honeywell. He is always on us. Let's get the band going.
Oh, and he's a front man for sure.
He is definitely
then you got Petsy on the drums. Yeah. I mean, at one point we had a couple guitarists. We had a guy who played stand-up bass drums, and then we got a lot of the other side with the violin and the classical stuff. I don't know if you could throw those together in an eclectic mix, but...
Last Haystack, they had a band. They got up and played, and they had a couple of professionals that came in, but then they had people from the community that got up and played. Yeah. That was a lot of fun.
Man, that's good stuff.
And you guys rock and roll with the summit. I got to tell you again, man, we had such a good time in New Orleans. You guys always do a great job with the summits.
Yeah, we were all, I think, as a larger community. Certainly the people at Tridium, and we got the message, too, from everybody else, that a little tired of Vegas. Let's try to figure out something else to do. There's only so many places you can go with a crowd that size. It's going to be fun, where you still get engagement from the group in the event itself. And that worked out perfectly. Man, it was good.
You really do. John, it's just so nice to get a chance to know you. I think oftentimes the programmers and the software engineers are behind the scenes just making it all happen. And I've got one final question for you, and which is, what do you want to be remembered for?
Man, you ask the deepest questions you can, don't you? I definitely am a technology guy, but what I enjoy the most and what I hope people will remember me for is my collaboration. I really do, to work closely with people, understand. That's one of the great things about the industry that we're in. And I think you guys mentioned it earlier, the co-opetition. You got a lot of competition, and yet you've got people that are extremely generous with their experience and their knowledge. And I want to be one of those guys. I want to make sure that the people I work with benefit from it. And I want to see those businesses and careers develop based on the impact that I've had.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Legacy Voices. Subscribe to this podcast and never miss an episode. To get all the control news you can use, including other industry podcasts, please visit us at controltrends.com.